Sometimes love doesn't end when a person is gone. It lingers in the scent of flowers, in the quiet corners of a home, and the gentle breeze of spring mornings. Tonight, I'll tell you the story of a man who found healing not in words, but in petals, soil, and silence. A story of grief, a story of love, and a garden that never stopped growing. He hadn't touched it in over a month, not since the funeral, since the priest had sprinkled holy water on the grave and said, "The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away." How could he have said that? Did God need her more than he did? Did God need an angel more than he needed his wife? Was there a cosmic shortage of angels? He called his mother. Was she in an accident? Had she gone away? No, his mother said, confused. Gone away where? She hasn't been here for 2 years, she says. 2 years. What did that mean? What had he missed? Had she moved on without him? Had she found someone else? The gate at the end was crooked. He pushed it open, stepped over the threshold, and entered the cemetery. The sun was setting. The sky was the color of old bruises. Inside, he emptied the vase of wilted flowers, one by one, dropping them into the bin. Then he took out the old hose, wound it around the tap, and dragged it out to the garden. He began to dig. It was hard work. The soil was dry and powdery. His hands bled. But he didn't care. This was the first time in weeks that he'd felt something other than despair. This was the first time in weeks that he felt connected to his wife, to his purpose, to life. It was filled with the ghosts of his past, faces he hadn't thought of in decades. His parents, their names carved on the same tombstone. His dog Rusty, who died on Christmas Day. Old Mr. Henderson, who'd given him his first job after school. He stopped by Margaret's grave. Ivy had crept up the side of it too. He knelt down, brushed off the dirt, and began to clean the inscription with a trembling hand. The questions ate at him. The thoughts kept him awake at night. Would he be taken away soon too? The thought made him gasp. By the end of the week, he built a shed, laid new paving stones, and was pruning the rose bushes. One evening, as he stood on the patio, sipping hot chocolate, watching the sunset, he saw a young couple holding hands by the pond in the neighboring cemetery. He smiled. The garden was in bloom again. And in its quiet beauty, he found Margaret. No, he didn't want to go anywhere. Not now. Not until he'd made sense of this. Of their life together, of all the things he'd said and done. He looked at the rose bushes by the window. They were supposed to meet every Saturday. At least that was the plan. He remembered how it had started. The first time he'd seen her, she was wearing a white dress, the kind that reached just below her knees. And she was kneeling by the rose bush. It was love at first sight for Thomas. The roses had climbed over the trellis and were growing into the second bedroom. Ivy had wrapped itself around the bird bath, choking it. The goldfish were gone. The statue of the old woman with the watering can had crumbled to dust. There was a gaping hole in the wall, and through it, he could see Mrs. Higgins next door pulling out weeds. She must have been here for hours, he thought. He couldn't remember the last time he'd stepped outside. He was 19, serving in the army at the time. The wind carried the scent of wet leaves and chimney smoke. Sunlight fell through cracks in the clouds. He pulled on his shoes and walked out the front door. His legs felt stiff. Each step was a foreign feeling. The crunch of gravel under his shoes echoed in his ears. He stopped by the rose bushes and pushed back the thorny vines. A few scraggly stems remained. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, trying to catch her scent. Nothing. All that remained was the faint, sweet smell of decay. She was 18, with hair the color of ripe wheat and eyes like forget-me-nots. He had been smitten. That was 43 years ago. And then one day she'd stopped showing up. He called her house, but the number had changed. He got out of bed, walked to the window, and looked out at the garden. It was cold. He walked down the path. After a while, he stood up, straightened his shirt, walked out of the cemetery back to the house. The next day, He planted bulbs and made a list of seeds to buy. Part 2. Planting pain into the soil. The bell above the door chimed merrily, announcing another customer. Thomas looked up from behind the counter, startled. It had become such a habit to sit in the silence of his empty shop that any sound startled him. He forced a smile, hoping the newcomer wouldn't notice how tired his eyes were. "Good morning," said the woman, stepping into the shop. "You have lovely flowers." She gestured to the tulips nodding on the counter. "They remind me of my late wife. We had a garden just like this one outside our home." He knew where this conversation was going, but he couldn't stop it. He didn't want to stop it. "Oh, she was a character, my Margaret. It's wild now, overgrown with weeds. I haven't touched it since I lost her." And with each step she took away from his shop, Thomas felt lighter, freer. As the door closed behind her, he heard her humming, and it sounded like the song his wife used to sing. He trailed off, embarrassed by his own words. What was he doing? Revealing his deepest wounds to a stranger? But the woman only nodded in understanding. But something, perhaps her voice and his memory, urged him to kneel. He began to clear the weeds, one by one. It wasn't easy. His knees hurt, his hands trembled. But with every shovel of dirt, he cried a little less. And every flower he planted whispered her name. He started with her favorites: tulips, white lily, forget-me-nots. Then he added a bench beneath the tree where she used to read, always with a funny quip. Never let me rest, always kept me on my toes. The woman paused, lost in the memory. I miss her so much. Her voice cracked. It's been 5 years since she passed, but some days it feels like yesterday. Do you understand? Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. She loved flowers so much, especially tulips. She said they reminded her of us. Do you know why? The pain in his chest lessened, replaced by a quiet joy. The garden became his therapy, his tulips a constant reminder of love's enduring power. And as he tended to his flowers, he learned to tend to his heart too. One day, he even found himself humming the tune his wife used to sing, and it was the same tune the woman had hummed in his shop. And he smiled, knowing that somewhere out there, someone else was finding joy in the shared memory of their beloved. For in the grand garden of life, their love for their wives, their hot air and water continued to bloom, connecting them in a way that transcended even death itself. Thomas shook his head, unable to tear his gaze away from the woman's smiling face. "Because we're both full of hot air and water," she said with a soft chuckle, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Thomas nodded, understanding all too well the feeling of losing someone and the ache that never quite goes away. He also knew the peculiar comfort one could find in shared grief. She said they reminded her of me. Do you know why? Thomas shook his head. Because you're full of hot air and water. They both laughed, the sound echoing in the small shop. It was the first time in what felt like forever that Thomas laughed. He felt a lightness in his chest, a release of some of the tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. In that moment, he saw an opportunity not only to sell a bouquet, but to connect, to share in the love and loss that had become the language of his heart. My wife left these, the woman continued, breaking into a watery smile as she picked out a handful of tulips. As he arranged the tulips into a bouquet, he told her about the garden in his backyard, the one he neglected for so long. And when the bell chimed again, announcing that it was time for her to leave, she did so with a promise to return. One morning, he walked into the garden. The ground was hard, dry, just like his heart. Weeks turned into months, seasons passed, and the garden bloomed wild, gentle and full of color. And somehow, so did Thomas. The garden grew, vines crept up the fence. Lavender bloomed, filling the air with its scent. Bees buzzed, butterflies fluttered, and the old stone walls basked in the sun. Each day Thomas tended the garden, and each night he sat on the wall, watching the sunset over the hills. It was a routine that had once felt burdensome, and now it was a solace. One day, a neighbor, an elderly woman named Martha, began to walk by every afternoon. At first, she just waved. Then one day, she stopped and sat on the wall. "It's beautiful," she said, nodding towards the garden. The next Sunday, she came and sat on the wall. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, looking at Thomas. He thought for a moment. "Aren't you the little girl who lives down the street?" A burly man with a kind face even offered to paint the garden fence. None of them knew Margaret, but Thomas told them about her. He told them how she laughed when it rained, how she danced barefoot, how she always said, "Love is a seed. You plant it, and it grows even after you're gone." The garden became more than a place. It became her story told in petals and leaves. And with each visitor, the garden grew, becoming a sanctuary, a place of peace and healing, a place where love, like the lavender, filled the air. She giggled. "I'm the princess who lives behind the wardrobe. And this," she said, gesturing to the garden, "is my castle." Thomas smiled. "Well, princess, what brings you here today?" "I remember when this house had a garden. I was just a girl, but I remember the laughter. It spilled out onto the lawn like the sunshine. My grandmother is sick, but only the magic from this garden can make her well." Thomas felt a pang of sympathy. His mother had used her garden to make magic for people, healing salves and potions and tinctures. It was legendary in the village. "What do you need?" he asked. She smiled, a faraway look in her eyes. "Your mother, God bless her, she loved this garden. She said it was her therapy, a whole bunch of lavender." Thomas got up and walked with her to the patch of lavender. He picked some for her and handed it to her. "This will help your grandmother," he promised. She took the flowers and pressed them to her nose. "Thank you," she whispered. And then she was gone, skipping down the path, the lavender clutched in her hand. She was barefoot and her hair was braided with wildflowers. "Is this the magical garden?" she asked, tilting her head. Thomas smiled. "It is if you believe in magic." She didn't reply, but he could see the wonder in her eyes. She closed them and inhaled deeply. "Oh, it smells like heaven here," she whispered. And then she was gone, skipping down the path. If she felt low, she'd come out here and weed and prune and plant, and by the time the evening came, she'd be smiling again. Thomas felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to ask her more, but Martha got up and dusted off her dress. "I should get home before my husband gets back from his nap," she said. "He likes an early supper, you know how men are." She stood up and turned. "You remind me of your mother, you know," she said, "with the way you tend this garden. It must be hard for you, this silence." "It's not so bad," Thomas said. He knew what she meant, but it wasn't the silence he found difficult. It was the memories that screamed in his ear at night, the echoes of laughter and the ghost of a woman in a lavender dress dancing in the rain. Those were the ghosts that haunted him. Not this, but Martha didn't understand. And as she walked away, she called over her shoulder, "You keep at it, son. You'll find your answers in the dirt and the sun and the rain." Your mother would have been proud of you. And with that, she was gone. The next day, a young girl from down the street stopped by. For a week, Thomas saw her skipping by, stopping to smell the lavender, then skipping away. "I need magic," she said, her voice suddenly serious. "Lavender," she said. As the days went by, more visitors came to Thomas's garden. Some brought baked goods, others brought tools or plants or flowers. If you haven't watched the previous parts yet, go do that first. And without further ado, let's begin. It was the first spring after she had passed away. The town was buzzing with life. The birds were singing, the bees were humming. He built paths and bridges. He made it the most beautiful garden in the world. He started feeling her presence everywhere. In the rustling leaves, in the chirping birds, In the blooming flowers, he felt her joy, her peace, her love. It was as if she was telling him, "I am here." He dug up the letter and opened it. The letter read, "I thought I had lost you, but I was wrong." She was in the garden, and the flowers, and the trees, and the birds, and the bees, and the wind, and the sunshine. She was here, and he was happy. "You are here. You are in my heart. You are in my soul. You are in my life. I may not see you, but I feel you." And if you did, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I may not hear you, but I listen. I may not touch you, but I believe. I thought I had lost you, but I was wrong. You are here. You are in my dreams. You are in my hopes. You are in my prayers. You are in my love. I may not know what tomorrow brings, but I know you will be with me. I thought I had lost you, but I was wrong. You are here. You are in every moment, in every breath, in every step, in every beat of my heart. You are here. And I will find you again one day. I am a part of this garden, and I will always be with you. And he knew she was right. She wasn't gone. She was just in another form, a part of the garden they had created together. His garden was his legacy, a testament to his undying love for his wife. Those who found his garden said they felt something there, something indescribable, a sense of peace, a feeling of warmth, a vibe of love. They said the roses smelled like a memory. They said the wind sometimes whispered a woman's laughter, and the bench beneath the tree, it was still waiting for the next story. And in the center of it all, he placed a bench beneath a large oak tree. It was their tree. They had planted it together on their first date. Back then, they were just two young lovers, dreaming of a future together. And now, he was making their tree the centerpiece of his garden, a tribute to their love. But in his little cottage, Thomas was still grieving. It had been almost a year since he lost his beloved wife, and the pain was still fresh in his heart. But as the days passed, something strange began to happen. He started seeing her everywhere. In the morning, when the sun peeked through the curtains, he would see her in the golden light. When he walked in the garden, he would see her among the flowers. When he looked up at the sky, he would see her in the clouds. At first, he thought he was going crazy. But then he realized that she was trying to tell him something. She wanted him to move on. She wanted him to live again. So he did something crazy. He decided to build her a garden. He spent all his time and energy on it. He planted flowers, shrubs, and trees. As the garden grew, so did Thomas's heart. One day, as he was sitting on the bench beneath their tree, he took out a small jar from his pocket. Inside the jar was a letter. It was the letter he had written to her, the letter he had buried beneath the rose bush. He had forgotten all about it until a few weeks ago, when he had started digging the soil. The letter was his way of coping with her death, his way of expressing the pain and confusion he felt. But now he no longer felt that way. Now he felt her love, her presence, her peace. So he got up from the bench and went to the rose bush. He smiled as he read the letter. It was the truth. She was here. Thomas passed away quietly 3 years later. He was an old man when he died, but his heart was still young. Some stories never end. They just wait to be remembered. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed the story.